those numbers of visits to the food bank should be considered as key economic indicators. And there are people who are looking at it and say, those are real numbers. They're not lagging numbers. They're happening right now. And it speaks to the state of our economy and the state of our social supports, et cetera.
Well, it all comes down to, in a great many of these cases, as we talked about, they're not getting a livable wage. And they're trying to work, 2 or 3 part-time jobs. Even if they're getting a decent hourly rate, they're not getting enough hours to get by on. So they have to work somewhere else. They have to travel a lot to get these jobs. Some sort of help. I think there needs to be some sort of recognition that a minimum wage does not apply across Ontario. That Toronto's minimum wage absolutely needs to be different. If you expect your employees to live in that city, and if you don't expect them to live in the city, then you need to provide them with transportation costs. You cover their transit fees, something like this. I think the government has to help out in ways that, if people aren't making a livable wage, we're allowing technology to not improve us our job opportunities. We're allowing people to become Uber drivers, for God's sakes, or skip the dishes. They're not making it going from a non-livable wage to unsustainable at all. So we've made things worse with the technology. We've allowed jobs to become even lower paid with no security whatsoever. I think those things need to be addressed on a policy front, and that would help people get, as I say, to an actual living wage where they could actually work and afford to feed their family. And no one's, we're not talking about people coasting on the system. There's always going to be some taking advantage of the system. People lining up at food banks are not there for the fun of it or for the free food. They're there because they cannot afford to.
But, again, I want to embrace the notion that everybody should have food to eat and that this is an issue that we have to address. But Keith, to your point, 70% of the people, and this is the statistics in this report, are single. Okay? They're making, I think Neil said, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, roughly $1,200 a month, working a number of different jobs. I mean, okay, we do have issues that go beyond simply, the economy that are affecting people. It might be other, as I said, I don't know exactly the drill down on this sort of stuff, but I will say this. I've just finished doing a series of polls and releasing them across this country, done for City News at Rogers. And what we did was a repeat of the work that we did last year, and that was look at situations in Vancouver and the metropolitan area there, Edmonton, Calgary, Toronto, and the GTA. And the most recent report is on immigration. And the most surprising thing that came out of me, and then I had to think about it, was only a third of the people in each one of those cities, in some less, basically said, you know what, we're not getting enough money from the federal government. But the rest of them seem to believe that, half of them in those cities said, yeah, we're getting enough. And the other part said we're getting too much, if you can believe it, roughly a quarter. What it speaks to is a sense that there's not enough coordination between the governments to deal with this. I mean, we're not putting together the management structure. And people believe that you just can't throw money at things. You've got to coordinate the responses from the municipal level right up to the federal government level. So again, I think this is a really complicated issue to look at if we're not dealing with a whole series of facts out in the open. And I don't want to see people go hungry, but I think there's a scrutiny here that people want before, they buy into the proposition that this is a major crisis amongst most people across this country.
And yet we have government policy to give, Galen Weston and Loblaws, the bread price fixing company, will buy their freezers for them. What's going to happen? What the heck are we doing with that kind of stuff when people are lining up at the food banks? I think there needs to be some responsibility, corporate responsibility, for dealing with food banks and helping us alleviate the actual need for them at some point. But we have corporations that are literally fixing the price of bread for years and years. And then we give them government subsidies. I just don't get it. It's just the wrong message. And this is why people will, they start looking for scapegoats. All these people are single. They don't deserve help. They need to eat. They're here. I'm sorry.